Hajimemashite, watashi wa Deru desu. Kore wa Flabonga Montrotho Cube. With me today, I have my co-host,
Tony Stevenson,
and our awesome guest.
That's me, Tom Johnson.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for being here. This is where you say thank you for having me, and we do a witty repartee. No pressure.
Right, I was picking up from, I think the last time I was on where we were doing the awkward silences, but I guess that ship has sailed. Thank you so much for having me, our great overlord.
You think I'm an overlord?
I was talking to Tony, but it's all right, mate.
So I think this is the most hyped episode of FM ever because we've all done simultaneous posts using ChatGPT/AI. And AI has done all of us dirty. It made Tony a good 15 years older. It took away your beard. It made me hencher, but also fatter in the face. I'm not happy
took
with
about
this.
5 stone off me as well.
Yeah, it didn't look like you.
It gave me a jawline back. I know. Yeah.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
Sorry, I've never been there. I don't think.
Let's go back to business real quick, Tom. We know who you are. What do you do, and why do you do it?
Cool. So, I every Sunday sell muffins.
Are you the
all kinds of
man?
types. Oh, I'm so glad you said that you cottoned on. I always say that, and people never go, "The muffin man."
The muffin man.
I always hope they do. Cool. Yeah. What do I do? Work for Content Snare. Do you know what? Before I actually realized I worked for Content Snare, I never realized this was actually an issue. And then I started working for Content Snare. I looked at the platform and I was like, oh my God, this is one of the sexiest things I've ever seen. In terms of how it works. I mean, Adele, you've seen it, right? So you can vouch for that.
I wouldn't say it's the sexiest thing I've ever seen. I watched From Dusk Till Dawn when I was 12 years old. Salma Hayek was in that. I'm saying.
You just got a mirror on your ceiling, haven't you, mate? So yeah, basically, I help accountants and bookkeepers and other businesses, but mainly those, get information from their clients without the back and forth. So no more, Gary, please, will you send me your P45 and send them 5, 6, 7 emails to do that? Or no,
I've sent it. Yes, that was for 2019. I've done it. No, you haven't, Gary. Yeah. Yes, I have.
Exactly right. Or it's like, you know, you need something, someone sends you a blurry screenshot of their screen, and actually it's like, well, we can just say we'll only accept PDF. So it's a huge problem that I don't think people realize that they have until they start solving it. Like, for example, Jessica Pillow is a brilliant one of our users. Her whole team are just incredible, and they're like, the amount of time that they save. This handles queries, onboarding, kind of, if you need to get something from a client, that's what we fix.
I think we should give a shout out to Jessica. She's somebody we should definitely go on FM if she's not been on before. She's great.
I don't think she has been on before.
She is wicked.
Marcus Batson, what time do you guys call this? 5 past. Marcus, this is entirely my fault. Everyone else, Tony and Tom, were on time. I was late. I take full responsibility and accountability for the lateness of this show. I would give you a sincere apology, but my apology would not be sincere, so I give you a fictitious and false apology.
He was just ChatGPT. No, make me stronger. No.
Well, I feel calm now that I know that Marcus is dialed in because it's not really FM. It's not FM without Marcus, is it?
Also, my response to this is free social media. You get what you pay for. Deal with it. Sorry, I'm being very confrontational. I apologise.
What do you do? What do you get if you do pay for social media?
A better level of service.
Do you know any paid social media platforms?
Editing.
You get a piece of my soul as well. Someone sponsors this, they'll get a little modicum of my dark soul. I've interrupted you again, guest. I apologise. That was not good. So for the can you break it down for the people who are non-accountants and non-bookkeepers? Why is document processing and storage, honestly, no joke, so important for businesses? Like, because we often talk about people we know in our industry, that's great, but I, as the business owner, Ariana's here. Hey, Ariana.
Hey, Ariana.
For no one that just thought I was just doing a random dance, you said break it down, and I've been watching a lot of Instagram recently, and it's like, can you break it down for me? And then people just start dancing. So that was my attempt at being funny.
Let's go to boy band mode. Boy band. Tell me why. Sorry.
So
Yeah,
let's not get carried away. Yeah, look, you asked the question, which I think is really great. Why is this such a problem? And the problem is when we get information from clients, we have so many processes for it. We might have a portal, we might have WhatsApp, we might have email. We've got obviously Xero for or QuickBooks, Sage, whatever you use, and Dext. And say, for example, let's take like a sole trader. We don't like sole traders in the sense that usually we can't charge them a load of money. Sorry. Great example of sole traders. We can't charge them loads of money. We historically need them to confirm a lot of information, but getting that from them can be a real challenge. So trying to chase them up is just going to end up costing you more time and money. And email threads become really difficult to understand after a period of time. So what we do is we put all of that in one place. And the reason why it's I think the thing is, for most people, they always end up getting it done, whatever the piece of work is, whether it be like a query, month end, VAT return, whatever it is, they always end up getting it done, but probably not in the way that they think it should be done. And what I mean there is like they're up till whatever time close to the deadline, really scrambling to get this stuff done. And we have the glitz and the glamour of we've got bank feeds flowing through, we've got clients uploading receipts, we've got auto fetch, and that's great, but that's not the full picture. And there's loads of other pieces of information that we need to get. And the problem is that's not treated like we would treat other information, which we use tools such as Massive List to get information from clients. So all these ad hoc stuff that we try and get, we just kind of let it happen. And there's no real process to it. And it's such a problem because the more you ask somebody for something, if I send you an email or I say, go and upload this into the portal, the more you have to reach out to that client, the more impact it's going to have on your business. And it becomes this massive bottleneck. And I always try and paint this picture of it's like this massive balloon. And every time you go to a client and you ask them for something, whether it be, hey, I sent you this, you sent me 3 of the 5 items I asked, that's more air that goes into that balloon. And eventually it becomes this massive piece of work that you have to do at the last minute. So it becomes, again, a huge, huge problem. And I think we underestimate it because it's always like little ad hoc stuff. Can you confirm this? Can you give me that? But all of those things build up.
So from a client perspective, the business owner, could I posit that if an accounting firm or bookkeeper had some kind of system like Content Snare, again, they're not paying me to say this, it could show better processes, and in theory, they have more time to work with that client, do more advisory work, or just have a better client relationship, right? So you might be getting a better service if your chosen financial advisor or service has some form of good document capture, correct?
100%. It's a much better experience. Like, ask yourself this, right? If I sent you a email and I said, I need these 20 things in this long list, and then you gave me like one of those, I came back to you and I said, hey, look, if you're having a problem, upload it into this portal. I upload some stuff into that portal. 2 weeks down the line, I've got no idea where any of that stuff is. And it's not a great experience at all. As where if I have one place, I just put it all in. And so we actually invest so much into the client experience. There's something we do, and I'm going to brag, is whenever like a client fills in a question, we only ever show them one question at a time. So they get into almost like a flow state, which means that they fill stuff in. That's huge. And for them, it's so much better. Hey, Nick. Ooh, I'm really cold.
Guests tuning in today.
Good people tuning in, yeah. Really cool.
I find this piece fascinating, Tom, because we do a survey out to our accounting base every year, and we ask them like, what's the bit you dislike about your job the most? And every single year it comes back collecting data from clients. It's still the number one bit that they dislike the most about their job, right? Which kind of ties into this piece. And I saw this really interesting post the other day from Jason Stats about like the sort of process of going through this. So it's like kind of, can your bookkeeping software gather the data like a bank feed? Can X other tool gather the data? If it can't, then there's like another sort of smaller piece at the end that we can potentially systemize through humans, in addition to supplementing this so that over time we can kind of move more of them onto the platform. But there's always going to be that snaggly, horrible little thing that just kind of isn't collectible in a digital fashion. Do you subscribe to that thinking along these lines?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always going to be information that we don't necessarily have access to, and we need it at some point.
Absolutely.
And going down and breaking it. And I think Jason did another post about like a lot of products have overlap in them.
Oh yeah.
And that's the big thing, right? Is it's like it's almost like, so in the sales world, if for example someone signs up to a webinar, we have what we call waterfall enrichment. So it will go through one software. Can we find their phone number? Have we got the right email address? Do we have their LinkedIn URL? Eventually, by the time it gets to like us, we have all that information. And I think in Jason Stats post, it's like it's almost like a waterfall method of actually just making sure that by the time you're doing the work, you've got everything you need. And it's like a waterfall.
Yeah.
And it's very similar.
Do you know the post I'm talking about? And he goes on to sort of say that if you can use the people, so if you can have that clutch of people who do the data collection, but also supervise the above steps of the data collection, that if they then finish that job off and then label it up correctly and make sure it's where it needs to be, or the system has done that, actually the figure he quoted was 70% as worth of the bookkeeping work has then kind of been completed how you wanted it to be completed. And then you can kind of go on and do the rest of it from a good position of starting point, right? Because we all know the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So I think it's really interesting.
So we did a webinar on like tax season automated, and the account that we had on her name is Jackie, and she actually built one of the templates that sits in Content Snare. It's for like ITRs, which is like self-assessments in the UK, and we ran through a process, and she said by the time she actually goes to do the job, 90% of the work is done, which is just incredible because it's like the engagement letter's gone out, the information's been collected, everything's there. She was like, I just input the info and then that's it.
And presumably ITR stands for income tax return. Is that right?
Individual tax return.
Individual tax return. I was lucky enough to spend some time in Australia, and one thing that stood out to me was how brilliantly they name everything and how simply they name everything. So like the brown snake is just a brown snake, right? That's what they called it. The red-bellied spider is a red-bellied spider, right? And that just makes perfect sense, rather than in the UK where we call it the self-assessment tax return or whatever it is that SA 100 or whatever it is we call it, which is sorry, maybe less obvious, but that's really cool. So you guys, you currently operate out of Australia, but you work with global clients. Are expansion plans on the horizon?
Yes, so we're doing a lot into the UK. So you'll see, I think Tom Herbert said this, we've begun to really start opening up into the UK. So like I said, people like Jessica, we have that use us, Ollie Evans, and we've seen a growing trend of
Evans and Partners down Bristol way.
I think so.
Yeah, we spent loads of time with him many years ago. Yeah,
it's good, really good guy. He always talks about us, which is great. But yeah, no, we're expanding. That's kind of like, so my new role is global business development manager, which basically means I look after kind of like, it's very.
You sell to the world. That's what it means.
It's like whacking whole grain before pasta, or any word, whole grain pasta. Just sounds better. But yeah, my key markets are USA, UK, and Australia and NZ. But yeah, we're really starting to drive into the UK because frankly, people are interested. Also MTD, that's a really big one, right? Like some of these people that we mentioned earlier, you're already struggling to get the info from, you've now got to do it 4 times a year. That's going to be really difficult. So we're looking at, can we basically build an MTD template? And we have like recurring send. So you can just schedule that to as many people as you want. And that will just go and do it all for you, which is that whole, like, we could term it now 90% rule, trying to get 90% of it done by the time you actually come to look at it.
I'm going to go back a step. You mentioned in your role, you're global, and you mentioned, I think, 4 markets. Of those markets, what's the different kind of like penetration methods you use, or how difficult is it to get into those markets? Because obviously we've got different cultures. I'll say language.
I thought you were going
like,
to say which one's your favourite. Like when you ask people.
No. I've learned not to do that anymore. Right. I will do it later, but like I've learned to change it a little bit. So like obviously they require different approaches. That's what I've learned. So culturally speaking, like which one's hardest to kind of mold your approach to? Do different nationalities require different approaches or different kind of campaigns in your experience?
I think probably yes and no. I think the biggest thing is understanding how people buy is slightly different in the sense that some are like, so I speak to, for example, I did a live demo today to a group of like 15 people, and I just called them up. And one of the guys I spoke to was like, yeah, cracking demo. How do I get started? And that was it. And
so wait, what nationality was it? Is that an Australian person?
That's Australian. That's where I tend to find in the UK, don't shoot me. But in the UK, accountants tend to have maybe more technical questions. So the Australians are very, I think from my experience of being here, very relaxed and very like, okay, cool. Like we'll try it. We'll see how it goes. They are very system orientated. So they have like out here, I speak to people, and one of the biggest things is it's like, it's not, does it solve this problem? First and foremost, it's how does this fit into my stack before I go any further? Does it connect with these tools? If not, I'm not even going to touch it. And I see that a lot more.
So different approach.
But really the approach is the biggest thing. And I always do this. And I think Dale, you've been kind of party to this, is having an idea of what the problem is in that country and then verifying that with the people that actually might have that problem. And then it becomes about your messaging and making sure that the tools that we have, like the stuff that we have, is geared towards that. I would say the methods are pretty much the same. Make a lot of noise, speak to the people that want to speak to you, and go from there. Okay,
so follow-up question as well. You said identifying the problems in those countries. Are you able to kind of elaborate on the different problems or stages based on those different regions that you've got? Without insulting anybody, preferably.
Yeah, of course. So let's insult all of them. Right, so getting started.
Go home. Yeah.
I mean, so like in Australia, for example, one of the things that they have here is ATO, which is like the tax authority, and people have to link. So clients have to link that. So it's called ATO linking. That's a huge problem for a lot of people when they're onboarding clients. So in what we have, we basically use like checkboxes and instruction fields, and we walk people through how to go and link that. Do you see this box? Do you have this set? Yes, no. And we have like conditional logic will show questions and answers depending on how somebody's filling it in. So we have like that, which is really big. Then we have, for example, BAS lodgements, which is like kind of almost a bit like VAT, where we have that. We have like the sending of ABA files. One thing that I see a lot here, but I don't see in the UK as much, is like the Xero uncoded statement lines report. So people will pull that out and put that into a table and then get the client to fill that in. I don't see that as much of an issue in the UK. I don't know why. I don't know if it's more with like open banking and stuff that sits in there. I generally don't know. So yeah, like that's probably like in Australia, there's a lot more of that sort of stuff. In the UK, there's a lot more, I don't know, like more client query stuff. Onboarding generally is the thing. That's one of the massive parts of getting information at onboarding stage. I love it. Getting on board, like that's one of the biggest parts for everybody, but then it's those nuances. So like ATO linking here, I wouldn't necessarily say HMRC linking is a huge issue in the UK. It might be, I might be wrong there, but like MTD is a much more pressing issue right now.
So why is that linking thing a trouble then? What's the problem with it that we don't experience over here?
Basically going to the client, you need to link your ATO to us. And the problem is we're asking the client to do something that we can't do, and we can't move forward until they do that thing.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest thing, is we all know if you ask a client to do something, it's going to be difficult. And then they're going to ask you like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? And again, it's more touch points.
Yeah.
As where we can say, this is how you do it. Here's walkthrough. See you later.
Okay. Completely left field question. Each industry has buzzwords. Are there different buzzwords in Australia than there are in the UK? And follow-up question to that, which buzzword would you like to get rid of entirely?
Oof.
There's like 3 questions in one.
That is a lot of questions. I haven't really noticed a difference in buzzwords. I think I hear a lot less value, like we're going to do more value-added work. I hear that hardly at all here, as we're in the UK. It feels like everybody with a LinkedIn profile uses it. And that is probably the word, value-added. Oh, grow up. Like, we're just going to, do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to offer services to the businesses that need them. Like, we're going to offer you, do you know what? Like, if you're getting this level of service, we're just going to offer you more services to help with where your business is at. Because reality is, there's no point offering value-added service to somebody that just wants to run a lifestyle business. So I get the idea of value-added, and I like it, but it encompasses so much, and I just think it's too broad of a term for so many different things.
How about you, Tony? What's the word there's a buzzword that you could axe from the dictionary that we use too much?
I'm struggling to steer. Am I allowed to go outside of our world?
Oh, completely outside of industry. So like mine is synergistic. Synergistic gets used way too much.
You didn't say that.
Synergistic.
Mine is the word that I dislike the most is rustic.
Rustic.
Rustic. Yeah.
That's a very
when
good sales
everyone's
tool.
talking about like food, and this rustic bread, I was like,
it's just bread.
It's just bread. It's nice. And then I suppose the grown-up version of rustic is artisan. Maybe, I don't know. It feels like less. I don't know.
Ironically, we use that almost every week when we ask the coffee question.
Yes, we do.
Tom, we asked you the coffee question because like you're a veteran of the show. I think it's your third appearance, but first time with Tony, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In that case, you must not have been asked the coffee question, Tony.
No.
Over to you.
Firstly, do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
Good. So if we can all agree that your local artisan coffee shop is the place to be when you're getting your coffee fix. Imagine you're in a world where that doesn't exist and the only coffee outlets available to you are the large coffee chains. Which coffee chain would you go to if you had a limited choice of all the coffee chains, and which one would you avoid like the plague?
Starbucks, avoid Cafe Nero.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I do enjoy this question.
Yeah, I do as well, because I'm a Starbucks and my avoid is Costa. Like, no shade, they're just standardized sizes. And yeah, you're a Nero man.
Size, Tony. It's about the taste. You're a Nero man.
Dale.
Me, I'm a Costa guy.
Yeah. But you do like Nero as well, though, don't you?
I don't mind it, but Starbucks is the bottom list for me.
I ran this on some mates last weekend, and they all came to the same conclusion, which was that Starbucks is burnt, and too bitter for them.
Oh wow! Hold on, we've got a good comment coming in. It's long. Thanks, Ariana. I'm gonna read this out. Let me preview it first of all, because sometimes I read things like a teleprompter, and it's stuff I should have read in my head first. All right, here we go. Ariana. There are some things which are super valuable for business owners, but they do not necessarily appreciate it until they realize they need it. A case of you don't know what you don't know sometimes, me included. So value-add services probably needs to be clarified. Touche, Ariana. Good point.
Yeah, that's a brilliant comment. And that's the bit where I say like value-add, when people tend to use it, they tend to use it in such a broad aspect. And it's actually like your need might be one specific vertical here, which will add value to your business, but it's the broadness.
Thank you for the comment, Ariana. It's nice to know that people are listening and engaging. It's always a better show when that happens. So yeah, keep the comments coming, keep asking questions. Make jokes at Tom's expense. He loves it.
I'm going to say that we've had, at least since I've been on the show, 2 new commenters today. I am willing to bet that there's a few people sitting there listening to us yakking on again on a Wednesday at high noon, who've never put a comment on any of the posts or feeds, but probably thought about it. So, if that's you, today's your day. Go for it.
Step up.
What was it you called it? Crossing the fourth wall, was it, or something like that? Interacting with people that were outside.
Breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall. Yeah.
The favorite time I did it was I reposted it. Is when I did it to Alex's son, because he's the second born. Anyway, Tom, are you ever called Thomas, and if so, by whom?
I am. Sinead, my partner, constantly calls me Thomas, and she always does it like we're in a supermarket. No, we're in trouble. She should go Thomas, like Thomas. I'm like, you full named me in a supermarket in front of these strangers. How will I ever live?
So, like, very rarely it's only Sinead that calls you Thomas.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you think she does it deliberately to wind you up?
I would not put it past her because that is one of my favorite pastimes is winding her up. So I would assume so.
Okay, providing it's not too personal, like what little things do you do to wind her up?
Oh, one of my favorite things, and I do this. Is like, say for example, like I'm sat here right now, and Sinead's. I can hear that she's, I don't know, gonna sit down. Or the moment she sits down, I'll be like, "Oh, Sinead, can you come here really quickly, please?" She'll get here, and I'll just look at her like, "You all right?"
Oh, that's rough. That is so
and,
rough.
And the last place we were at, the bedroom backed onto the stairs, so I could hear where she was in the stairs, and I knew there was a threshold just before. So she gets to this point where she's like committed going down the stairs, but not all the way there. And I'm like, "Oh, can you?" She'd run back up, and I'm like, "Oh, can I help you?"
We do that at the rugby changing rooms when people leave in our club. Especially when they're new, and you shout back to them, and they'll come walking back and stick their head around the door. Bye. So the oldies amongst us, we giggle because we've been doing it for decades.
That's diabolical.
Yeah, it is. It is. Have you seen that? I'm pretty sure it is an Australian video, and it is a guy sitting on his sofa, and he's there with his partner, and she's like raging at him because he's not been doing anything, and she shouts at him. She's like, "Do you think this stuff puts itself away?" And he's like, "I didn't want to tell you about this because I didn't want to jinx it, but come with me." Have you seen this?
Table,
the coffee table. The coffee table. Yeah.
I'm putting stuff on here for years, and it just vanishes.
It's satire, but I can imagine there's at least a couple of men in the world that do believe and think that way. That there's a magical table that suddenly clears everything up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's jokes. Tom, if you could punch one fictional character in the face and fully get away with it, no repercussions, no judgment, who would it be?
Joffrey, Game of Thrones, 100%.
Good choice. He's a fantastic villain. He was an absolute brat, wasn't he?
Sure was.
Yeah.
I always think that you have to be such a great actor for people to dislike you that much. Or like, what's the kid in Power, the guy's ghost's son, Troy, I think his name is. He was phenomenal. I just remember everyone hated him. And I thought he's going to be such a great actor to be able to do that, to make people hate you that much.
Do you have a favorite actor?
Paul Bettany.
What's he famous for? I asked this question. I don't realize I don't know that many actors.
So he is in the Marvel films. He's the purple guy with the thing on his head. Oh,
Yondu, right?
Yes, but he's really great. He's in, I think, a film called Legion. He's also in A Knight's Tale.
Okay. What makes him your favorite? What is it about his performances that strike?
I don't know. Just really liked him. Okay. I think also Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is rarely in a bad movie.
Yeah, he's superb.
Always a solid performance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Tony? Favorite actor?
Do you know what I was thinking on that then? I really enjoy Tom Hanks, and also I like McConaughey just because of his just smoothness, and I really like Fight Club's one of my all-time faves, and I love Edward Norton in Fight Club, and obviously Brad as well. But yeah.
Nice. Solid choices.
Yeah, pretty mainstream. Tell you who I do love actually, who is a bit niche, and so my wife and I love sort of like cottage British films. So things like it's dropped out of my head now. The one about the cat and the homeless guy. It's dropped out of my head. The name of it, Street Cat Named Bob. And I really like This Country and The Detectorists and TV stuff like that. I really like Toby Jones, the guy who plays the lead in Detectorists and the guy who played the lead in the series about the post office scandal. Mm-hmm. I think he's just a superb actor.
Yeah, Toby Jones. I know. He's the evil scientist, isn't he? In
all sorts of stuff.
He's a German scientist, isn't he?
I always think that it's good if somebody can play different things and you don't immediately pick up that they're the same person rather than just playing the same role in different.
Is Johnny Depp one of those kind of actors? Because he plays quite caricature characters that are very different. I think.
Crazy guy.
Yeah.
Crazy guy. I had a question then. It's dropped out of my head. I like the fact that
who's
Tom's-
Dale's favourite actor?
Probably John Lithgow. He was the commander in Third Rock from the Sun, and he is a classically trained actor. And in that show, he plays a very silly character. But I've seen him do like the villain roles. I've seen him do the dad roles. I've seen him do a few hero roles. Very versatile. In my opinion, underrated. But I think he's very, very funny. And he's got like that kind of like Globe Theatre, Shakespearean training background. He's like a great orator. That's why I like an actors. Again, Andre Braugher, God rest his soul.
There's some just guy who's hugely contributed to the advancement of the human race by sitting down and counting, maybe got AI to do it, how much Samuel L. Jackson has earned in his career, and how, you know what I'm saying, and how many words he's said in films, and how many of those words were a super profanity, exactly, right? And he said that word like X number of times, so they worked out like how much he'd been paid per word, and he'd earned like over $1 million from saying that particular word throughout his performances in the various films that he's done over time. But he's another favourite of mine.
Do you remember years ago he did like an advert for Barclays, and like he actually was like just very serious and like was wearing like a flat cap and
I remember it.
Yeah, so bizarre because he wasn't.
Versatile. Yeah, versatile. Probably we got the same agent as Usain Bolt in his personal adverts and his Virgin Media adverts. Maybe, I don't know.
Similar vein of question then. Do you guys have like a sporting hero? I know, Tony, you must have.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty, mate. Yeah, I've got plenty. Tom can answer first if he wants to. If he wants a bit of buying a bit of time, I can answer.
I do. So I'm a big Charles Oliveira fan, who is a UFC fighter. I'm a big fan of his. There's a few like UFC fighters that I like UFC. That's probably. I don't know. You can't not like Cristiano Ronaldo, and I'm willing to die on that hill.
So if you were to choose the GOAT, is it Messi or is it Ronaldo? I was reading.
Don't work on a farm, mate.
I was reading some of his stats the other day. Like, he is just ridiculous, and he's got 62 goals to go to get to 1,000 career goals.
Crazy.
And he's still banging them in 35 a season in Saudi. He signed another 2-year deal. This was the one that got me, right. Was so from over the age of 30, Cristiano Ronaldo has scored 85 international goals. Only 5 people in history have scored more international goals in their entire careers. Wow. And he's done that over the age of 30. And that included people like, I think Pele was one of them, maybe, that weren't in that group. Harry Kane, still going, obviously, he'll probably pass that 85. And I'm sure Ronaldo will pass that 85. About to go and play his 6th World Cup. Has played 220 times for his country. Just like, yeah.
It's the thing for me is it's like that old that he was always, people said he was always the first and last one there at training. But one thing that, as I have got maybe significantly older, is the emphasis on recovery. And LeBron James does this as well. LeBron is still playing now. LeBron, he spends something over $1 million a year just on recovery. And it's like, you look at these players that are massively expanding their careers at the top level, not just expanding their careers. And the one kind of thing that they mainly have in common is their recovery, or their investment in recovery,
and their desire still to do it. They still want to go and achieve, and that's it, right? It's usually, I think it's that, like, I was listening to a guy on a rugby podcast the other day who's just retiring from international rugby, Ben Youngs, and he was talking about like the difference in, like, rugby's not I don't think it's particularly progressive sport in the grand scheme of things in terms of this stuff, but it's catching up, and having not been professional for that long. But he was saying, like, now we don't really do much contact in training because, like, we know how to tackle. So, like, emptying the tank in training physically is not good for anyone's longevity. And now the sport's kind of realised that sort of like hyper alpha masculine need to go and knock lumps out of each other on a Tuesday morning in January is to kind of pass by. And he's like, back in the beginning of my career 15 years ago, we would do double contact sessions in a day, whereas now it's more like, we might do one a week. Some weeks we don't do any, and actually, people are able to play longer. I think you're 100% right.
And you see that as well with, like, in, for example, UFC, Max Holloway. He, before fights now, he's completely stopped contact. Like heavy sparring. That's what I mean. Obviously, he's still contacting, but heavy sparring, he's completely stopped. And he said that was a massive part of his like training regime change, was just stop, punch me in the face before I'm about to go and fight. Makes sense.
You listen to the top guys talking about weightlifting, right? Which is something we can talk about, all three of us. And they were saying that if you do a genuine one repper, and that is you have drained everything out, especially with a deadlift, you're looking at like a week, possibly 2 weeks to back off that. And you should be cycling, Ed Cohen, the greatest powerlifter of all time. And he was like, well, I went into competitions not knowing what my one rep max was because I did it so rarely. He trained at a much lower, higher rep range, 5 reps, 3 reps or whatever. He's like, I never went to one because that's past the line. If you use a mountaineering analogy, that's in the death zone, right? That is damaging to my body. And I know that my central nervous system is going to take time to recover from that. Same with like, if you're going in heavy sparring, getting your head stoved in UFC, or you're in a rugby training session and you're getting lumps kicked out of you, you aren't going to be functioning at best, right? Mentally, you should still be able to get yourself up without having to go through that same routine. So yeah, I think sports science is fascinating. What's
crazy about this, and I always think about this a lot, is we talk about this in like sports and people constantly putting their bodies in the edge and that sort of stuff, but there's still, I think it's growing, but there's still such little investment in, like, it's better, but people don't look at this in their own jobs. Like, if you're working on a project constantly for like 3-12 months and you're using your brain, you're burning yourself out, cycling in like a holiday and actually just complete, because also a lot of people go on holidays with their phones and stuff, don't they? And actually it's like the burnout, like I've experienced burnout, it's awful. Like, it's an awful place to be. And I think you could probably take a lot from what sports people are doing and how they cycle in and out of going up and leading up to a competition, then dropping out into your own daily work.
I think my ideal work cycle would be sort of like 2 weeks on, 10 weeks off.
Makes sense.
And that would keep me fresh, I think. Yeah.
Please pitch that to free agency, how well that goes down.
Yeah, I'm sure Tony
would become a
just get all your work done. It's fine. Yeah, I would. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic tonnage. Okay, well, similar question I asked you about sports. Let's ask you about inspirational people in business, right? Are there any people that have inspired your career, either in the accounting space or outside? Who do you kind of like go, that's someone I want to follow or emulate?
I think it'd be a good shout to say James Ashford. The guy's sensational. He's like, some of the stuff he comes out with, and you're just like, yeah, do you know what? You get it. Like, you get it. And I remember when James was kind of first starting Go Proposal when I worked at Xero, and he gave like a presentation, and he told us all about his why he was doing these things. And it went from like, I think it was he just started Go Proposal, and then obviously had this massive exit with Sage. Now he's going on to do other stuff. He's like done that, and he's still going. So he, in our industry, is probably one for me. Outside of that, in the business world,
well, probably James would be one of my favourite guests to get on here, but I don't know well enough to ask him.
I've asked him and he's ignored me.
Is he? Okay.
And he's definitely not watching now, so I can't even break the fourth wall like James. Come on the show. Like, he's not watching, he's busy.
When you love it if you pop it in the comments. He's like, I've been watching you the whole time, guys. Yeah, I was just waiting. I just wanted to be episode 200, and that was it. Yeah, like I agree with you. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. I know that there are people that find what he delivers
polarizing
maybe, right? And I
aren't the best business people like that in some way, though?
Well, absolutely. To some extent. You would rather that somebody liked you or disliked you, just not forgot who you were, right? That's got to be third choice. I'm with you, Tom. I think his stuff is great. I think he has raised the bar of creating content and like the stuff that he talks about within our industry. Before there were lots of people doing it, and you know, and everyone I have met that's interacted with him closely has nothing but high praise indeed for him as a dude. So if anyone knows us, can intro us, that'd be great.
He's also quite tall as well. I didn't realize how tall he was.
He
is tall.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a tall dude. There's one person I would say in the business world, and he's very niche. His name's Dan Waldschmidt. He wrote a book called Edgy Conversations, and it's phenomenal. And basically, this guy was like, at the time, he was like head of like a CEO of a company at like 20 years old, had millions of dollars in the bank. And the book starts with him basically with a gun in his mouth, ready to kill himself. And it's just a story of like him coming to that realization. But he's like, business person, runs his own business. I think he's now like a CEO at another company. That book's an unbelievable read. Because then what he does in the book as well is he pulls out stories from different people, like pulls out Muhammad Ali's story, pulls out, I can't remember the guy's name. It was like the first African-American Navy SEAL diver. And like how the story is basically they used to do this induction where they'd go through on the seafloor, they'd get dropped like their bags of like nuts and bolts that they had to gather and pot in. And they had to basically then really like small time frame because of the oxygen. Because he was African-American at the time, they threw his bag everywhere and it scattered everywhere. And he didn't, like, he went past like essentially the death zone and ended up doing it. And he's like, everyone couldn't believe the feat that he had just done. So the book's it's called Edgy Conversations.
Cool. That's cool. For me, one of my business heroes is, it's a cliche one, Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My dad gave it to me when I was about 11 years old. If you haven't read it, it's a great read. It changes your mindset on time, earning, and if you're a business owner, like why you've built a business. You don't have to be a business owner to get it, but like, essentially how you trade time for money or skill for money and how you can maybe flip that narrative. Really great read. It's an established book. A lot of people read it, but it's still a good one in my opinion. One of my business heroes, as it were.
Very good. I have had that book on my list to read for like forever, and I haven't read it yet. So
read it.
Maybe that is the kick I need to read it.
In fact, I'll hold you accountable. I'll message you in a few weeks' time. Like, hey man, have you started reading it yet? I mean,
I'll be like, I've bought it, and I've now put it in the backlog of the 900 other books that I haven't bought to read. That I'm sure everybody else has as well, right? So I'm not going on holiday enough because I'm not reading enough. So yeah, I like in our space. One of the people that I always admire tremendously. Not usually, of course, for their achievements and what they've done for lifting the bar of cloud accounting, but is Gary Turner. And I, having been a former Xero, and Tom, you're the same, listening to Gary talk on a stage was like one of my favorite things to do in our space. Like, just that he was just brilliant at just standing up and just talking about kind of the future and what we could do with all of this stuff. So he was absolutely, for me, in a class of one when it comes to standing on the stage and yarning on about our stuff. So
I think the thing is like how far ahead he was of everybody else at the time was incredible. Like having been there and you're like, oh, okay, cool, this is great. And then like now, you know, he's exited. You see where Xero is at a place now where when he started, it was just him and he took the punt on this idea and was like, this will be where the market needs to go. And you see it now, you're like, I remember my first day at Xero, I had no idea who Gary was. And I walked into the kitchen, he'd come in and he had like a t-shirt tucked into his jeans. And he was asking me questions like, you get set up all okay? I thought he was like the IT support. I was like, yeah, I think I still need a mouse. And he just looked at me, he's like, all right, cool, see you later. I had no idea. And then I was like, great. And then you hear him speaking, you're like, wow. And then you hear kind of like where
when did the penny drop when you saw him on the stage talking and you were like, what's the IT guy up there?
No, it was very quick. I went back and I was like, oh yeah, I just spoke to the IT guy, and they were like, the guy was just in the kitchen.
Gary.
That's Gary, the MD, mate. I was like, oh, great, cool. I'll just leave now. I'll leave.
Okay, just thought of a question that's coming to my head. Tom, you've got extensive experience. Again, you mentioned your Xero days, working in fintech for different suppliers and vendors. What advice would you give to someone younger than you who's getting into this industry who wants to work in fintech? Like, how should they approach a fintech vendor? Are there particular vendors that are better to work for than others without insulting others? I'm just trying to be PC about this one. Like, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get into the fintech space?
Yeah, I think you have to find the company that aligns to your values, and I cannot stress that enough. I have worked at some places that have just not been a fit, or the role hasn't been a fit. And I've moved on slightly quicker than I should, and that just doesn't look good looking back. So it's like really making sure that's a fit. But the second part is move away from the vendors and look at the people that they're solving. And if you can really connect and understand who those people are and genuinely want to help them, you'll do so much better than anybody else that's just coming in, because you'll have a genuine interest in seeing the impact. And then when you see the impact, you can then take all of that information and then relay it to everybody else. And that's where you'll then really help. In terms of picking vendors and stuff, I always use Glassdoor, and I always look at, just go on LinkedIn, type in the business, see what people are saying about it. And then looking at, okay, who works at the company. Like, say, for example, someone's looking at Free Agent right now, they might be on here and go, okay, that's pretty cool that they allow them to do that. Or someone's looking at, I don't know, not a vendor, but Creston Reeves, and it's like they see you doing this. Well, okay, maybe I'd like to do that with my career. Is somewhere I'm going to do, like, enable me to do that?
What about you? I think that is a great question, and I have got lots to say on that subject, but I'm interested in your thoughts, D-Rod.
What, on my own question?
Yes.
What, where to choose to work in fintech or in accounting, or?
Well, however it works for you, but yeah. Just before I monopolise the mic for 2 minutes.
Just go with who pays you the most, right? I mean, no, jokes aside, all right? Like, all right.
The right answer.
I'm not sure I can add more than to what Thomas said. Like, yeah, the culture of work has changed in the last 10 years in terms of value and matching. And if you can get someone or a company that resonates with what you want to do, and they're willing to allow you to do it, then that's good. And yeah, as Tom said, you've got to be passionate about what you want to do, right? Because work by its very nature is hard. That's why it's called work. And there will be days when you don't like it. Like, people see me on this podcast having fun. There are days or times when I'm really frustrated with my job. And I have to remember, actually, I do like the outcomes of my work. I do like working with certain clients. But I don't like working with all clients. So if you're doing something that you enjoy, when the days suck, and I'm sure both of you can agree, there are some days where it sucks. Your passion and enthusiasm for the job is important, and also knowing that you have support of people around you, right? So again, I'll shout out to my employer. They are actually quite supportive of my extracurricular activities. They're very prepared to let me have my say, and I'm one of those people that needs to understand the why behind I'm doing something, and where possible, they will explain the why. So I might not understand the full strategy because that's senior leadership discussions, but someone will make sure they'll kind of get on board with this, and they'll break it down for me, which I can appreciate. So yeah, a company that's willing to invest in you and understand that you're an individual. Yeah, I think that kind of those days of corporate churn, I say they're gone, but like it's not a thing anymore. People want to have some kind of validity to their role. I hope that's added something to it, and I'm just waffled.
Reinvestment, that's the key. That I think that would definitely re-highlight what you just said, is if they're willing to invest in you. Like, you see firms now that have training schemes, training budget, they're like, for example, I know Iwoca, they used to do a reading budget. You could go and buy books that you wanted.
Put into your backlog.
Yeah, into Tony's backlog. Now I just scan through ChatGPT or Blinkist and go, just give me the summary, bro.
So, Tony, you said you wanted to comment on this, please.
Yeah. This is a really interesting topic, having been burned a couple of times by employments that weren't a fit.
This is when we all go onto your LinkedIn profiles and look and see the tenure.
Yeah, exactly right.
Sorry, please continue.
So I think that everything Tom said, 100%. I think that if you're looking, we should do a full episode on this. This is really interesting. Is you need to try at least to get comfortable in where that business is in its life cycle and whether that fits with how you like to what you like to do on a day-to-day basis, right? Because being very reductive, but there's 3 lifestyle stages of a business, right? So there's startup, there's scale up, and then there's scaled. If you like to do lots of different things and get involved with lots of stuff and probably never be able to do anything perfectly because of resources and insights and all that sort of stuff, then but you just want to keep running and build. We used to say at Xero, they used to say, like, you know, the cartoons were like hanging off the front of the train and building the track as you go type of thing, like that sort of thing. Feels often similar at Free Agent as well. Like in that startup phase, you'll be doing a lot of like chaos management, essentially firefighting. You probably have to turn your hand to things that yesterday you didn't think you were going to have to turn your hand to, and you kind of got to be comfortable with that. Scale up is more about, for me at least, it's about like taking that chaos and going through the process of turning that chaos into systems, into processes, into order, and growing things that weren't there previously, evolving quite quickly. If you're somebody that likes to come in, have very clear parameters on what your job is, sit down at the end of your year and go through your performance review and see whether you tick that box or tick that box, those two stages probably aren't for you necessarily, and actually you'd serve better in a larger, more stable, lower single figure digit growth company where you're able to kind of turn up and do your job, right? And that's not to say that there aren't pockets of those things in larger organizations, because then oftentimes when you get through corporate's challenges to re-innovate for itself, right? So then sometimes there becomes opportunities to kind of do these types of stage 1 and stage 2, but within the larger businesses. So I think, like, be honest with yourself about where you see yourself fitting into that. And actually you may well have to trial, and you may well have to go, do you know what, this didn't quite work for me. Like, for me, scale up is like the best bit, really. But I enjoy the process of turning the stuff into that, but I like things that are growing fast, and like things that are moving, and that there's novelty and that there's change, but that I will always tend towards, right, let's get a system, like, let's not solve the problem, let's build a system, that kind of thing. And I think as well, like, if you're somebody that looking to get into that, into this space, one thing that I have learned over the years is that, like, old networking isn't like what it used to be, like turning up to a networking breakfast with a paper, like, you know, a paper
business
thing.
card.
Yeah, business card. That's the thing I'm talking about. So it's been so long since I've used one that I can't remember. I take great pride in people saying, "Have you got a card?" And I say, "No." No intention of bridging that gap either. Right? I'm on LinkedIn. You'll find me there. But like reaching out to people, even start in the comments, reaching out to people in the comments. Like, you know, you've seen this, right? When somebody pops up on LinkedIn in our world, and you're like, oh, who's that guy? And like, well, who's that girl? And they're just like crawling all over the comments and posting a few bits and pieces themselves. You can do that from a position of curiosity. You don't necessarily have to have like a ton of stuff to like hang content around, but you can start it there and just reach out to people and just say, oh, look, you know, maybe I can help you with this, or like, oh, just interested in having a chat. See, there's nothing. Had somebody reach out to me today, or like, oh, you know, can see there's nothing particularly on at Free Agent at the moment, but be interested to have a chat. They're a super impressive person in our world, and I know them as well. So, you know, we'll have a chat, and oftentimes things move quickly, and you can establish yourself quite a powerful network. And oftentimes these types of jobs come out of network, right? We had this conversation today. Tom's mentioned that, you know, there's expansion happening at Content Snare. You reach out to Tom, have a conversation. Like, you reaching out and having a sensible conversation marks you out over like 97% of the rest of folks in the world who didn't have the nerve to do that and reach out and have that conversation. So, like, yeah, that's my tuppences.
I'd like to add something to what you said as well. You kind of prompted this, reminded me. You can be an employee and be entrepreneurial. I think a lot of people think that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to quit your day job, do the startup struggle, and then try and hustle there for 5 years. That's harder than people think it is. Everyone says this, but it's true. But you can be entrepreneurial in your role, providing you communicate well with your employer and be honest about what you're doing, and make sure that what you're doing
aligns with their interests.
Yeah, aligns with their interests. A decent employer will allow you to kind of do it your way to an extent. There will be parameters. I have parameters on what I do, but I'm allowed to be a little bit entrepreneurial.
Sales. James Sundin put this beautifully when I asked him that question about transitioning from an employee to an entrepreneur, which is something that Tom's done and then transitioned back again. And he put it nicely. He was like, I went from employee to intrapreneur to entrepreneur. So I bridged that gap by essentially switching my mindset to doing that stuff just within employment, and then that's led on to represent and, you know, and all the stuff that James has done in his world. So and I think oftentimes there's more scope there than you think there is when you're in the door, like to do new things, try new things. You know, like I'll give Free Agent a shout out here because they are an unbelievable employer for allowing people the freedom to be able to explore new things and try new things and then not go perfectly. You know, like you've obviously got to manage this with your day job and making sure that you're doing something that is value added. But they're superb at that. And culturally as well, like they're superb as well. I'm not just saying
advocate.
That's genuinely true.
Devil's advocate. Do you think that's because of the seniority within our roles that we have that? Like, do you think if you're more junior in your career, do you have less flexibility?
Yeah, but I think you have to prove that you're worth the bet, right? You have to come in. You're not going to do it straight off the bat day one. Likely, you need to prove that you've gone, you've done a good job and that you can be trusted to do this, that you see it, and that it also aligns. That you've seen the opportunity that aligns with where the business maybe wants to head. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend turning up on day one and going, that job you hired me to do, I don't want to do that job. I want to do a different job. And this is the job that I want to do on day one before your coffee's even been drunk. But yeah, you've got to prove your worth. I do think there is some element of that, but I don't think it's necessarily seniority. I think it's trust is the underlying thing.
I think you'll be bold as well. That's one of the biggest things I've always found and that's something I got so much better at. It's just asking a question. So I would say prior to Content Snare, because James and the team, absolutely phenomenal. Prior to that, Iwoca is the best employee I've ever had in my entire life. And one of the reasons was Rich Sutton. If you don't know him, make sure you reach out to him. One of the things that he and Emma would do, so we had Iwoca Pay, right? So we had COVID, lending, the civils, that sort of stuff. And he allowed me to, I'm probably very much in that scale up bridge bit there. I like coming in, making loads of noise, then trying to say, how do we put this all into a system so then we can grow? So he enabled me to do this. And I literally, one day I was like, Iwoca Pay will solve the problem, because we had this sell-through model for accountants that just didn't work. Iwoca Pay was such a better version for that. So I literally called like 30 accountants, popped that into a spreadsheet, and I spoke to these 30 accountants. They all said that they would use it and they would sign up. Went to Rich and he said, great, let's do it. How do we do it? And literally kind of January, we wrote a brief out, and January we just went for it. And then all of a sudden, Iwoca just grew. Iwoca Pay grew as a sub business within Iwoca, and it's gone on to do like loads of different stuff. But the biggest thing, and this is the biggest, if you're doing this and you're in this potent new role, and this is the best thing I learned from Iwoca, is document it. Because and in that document, have a question, what are we doing in like 2 sentences, so you can explain what is the purpose of this, who are we targeting, and what is the result. Because if you can answer those 3 questions, then you'll make sure that you're adding like the value you're adding to the company, rather than just doing random stuff. And now all of my briefs start with, what are we doing, who are we aiming it at, and what are the goals? And then after that, we have everything else.
I love that you said that, because for me, the key of business advisor is, where are we now? Where do you want to be? And how do you get there? That's literally it.
I was obsessed when I joined Iwoca. I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. And like, I'd have 100 ideas and only 3 of them would come out. As where with Rich, it was like, go and do everything, fail at wherever we need to fail at, learn what we need. I did a breakfast one time where everybody cancelled except David Addison from Utopia, who also David, Catherine, the team at Utopia are amazing. I'd recommend you connect with them if you haven't. David's the only person that turned up. I had this massive table of 20 people in the middle of this restaurant that I booked out. Dave was the only one who showed up.
Another glass up, Dave? I ate before I came.
But yeah, like, so the documenting that, like, we kind of found out where we went wrong. So when we did it again, we then did it in the evening, and we did it with one of the biggest things is contrasting people, and then saying, look, this is the reason that we're going to get people. So we had one-man bands, massive like people, directors at top 100, people that were like actively saying why top 100s need to change, all that sort of stuff. And it worked so much better, and it created such a forum of discussion. So yeah, that's the key, is like document it.
I want to just go, can I just, one thing from something Tom said before that I was just in my brain, I need to get out, otherwise I'll be thinking about it the rest of the day, is about that, like, be prepared to be told no. Like, my experience is that you'll try the first time and it'll be like, yeah, maybe, no. And then the second time you're like, oh, maybe, still no. Keep going. Like you like, if you just get put off the first time you ask, and then you just decided that that's it, that's the end of it. Like that road will feel like it's closed off to you, and often things change quicker than you think they're going to, right? So
yeah, I get told no. I get told no, and I get things wrong all of the time. Sometimes I'll say something and I'll be saying it and I know it's wrong, but I finish the sentence and go, do you know what, that's wrong? Yeah, I'm completely wrong. 95% of the time I get it wrong, and the 5% that I do get right, like, is the good stuff. That's the stuff that you do more of, and it's being brave enough to say, yeah, I'm gonna ask a question, because if I get a no, great, I get a no. If I mess it up, I mess it up.
Cool. All right, we're almost to time, guys. So, 2 wrap-up questions. The first one is, Tom, do you have a pearl of wisdom that you want to go out on? Maybe say this to last. And the second one is, do you have any questions for Tony and I?
What's the next big thing for FM? Because you're doing this stream, and we've covered some really interesting stuff in here. But what's next?
Cool. 2 things. Well, 3 things. We're thinking of doing maybe a debate style live stream in like maybe 3 to 6 months, where we'll have maybe like 6, 7 guests on, and the topic has been voted for by the people. It's like what's the topic? Something like, what do people mistake? How do people mistake working with bookkeepers and accountants? And I'll probably have a fintech vendor on, I'll have an accountant on, and a business owner, and like, you know, how like the miscommunication happens. We'll just discuss that. Second of all, we're thinking of changing the logo, because that logo needs to change. Third of all, we're trying to make a physical token from said logo, right? So people like you've been on the show a couple of times will give you the FM badge. Thank you for being on the show so many times. And then fourth one, sorry, I realized we're going to maybe nominate guest of the year. We'll do like a short list, maybe like 5 people, will then get the viewers to vote, like who was the most interesting, engaging, fun, exciting guest. Yeah, and just see how it goes.
I'm also working on Dale for us to privately decide what a Flamonga Montrotha cube actually is, and then issue like a kind of sweepstake out into the world, and people can vote for what they think it's going to be, and someone will get it right, and maybe there'll be a prize or something like that, which I think would be quite fun, because yeah.
And then last but not least, Tom, thank you for joining us. What is the pearl of wisdom, the nugget you want to go out on? I've got my finger hovered over the end stream button. Let's go.
Biggest thing is let go of your ego. I had a humongous ego, and I thought I was amazing at absolutely everything, and I'm really not. Like I said, I get 95, probably 98% of the things I do wrong. But what I do is I focus on the things that I get right and learn as much as possible. But you can only do that, and I only realized this later in life, you can only do that is if you let go of your ego. That will be the biggest thing that will cost you in any area of your life, is your ego. So just let it go and be willing to get stuff wrong.
Just